Hi, my name's Lisa, and I'm trying to figure out where to even start with this story because I'm really still working through everything that happened, just kind of absorbing it at this point, just because I could have never imagined that this would have happened. So I guess I'm just going to start with I flew out of state to work with my husband. I'm a registered nurse, and I was going to work 6 shifts for that week. And the night before my first shift, I flew in, and I did have some difficulties on the airplane, which I think I'm going to put in another video because it's related, but I want to just kind of stick to what happened here, and just how everything is now. Basically, I went to bed and I woke up about 2 in the morning, just extremely nauseated, didn't feel good. I ended up vomiting. Sometimes this does happen to me. I have a lot of stomach issues, still kind of working that out with the gastroenterologist, and I do have type 1 diabetes. So basically, when I did end up waking up a few hours later in the morning, I took something for nausea at that time, went back to sleep, and then when I woke up, I just did not feel good, and my vision, for some reason, was extremely blurry. I just remember looking around, and everything was just really, really blurry, and I'm still not quite sure why that is or how that correlates. I should mention, too, I'm in the hotel, so excuse the mess and everything. I am not really feeling up to doing much right now. So I went to work and I thought, maybe I'll feel better in the next couple hours. And about halfway through the day, all of a sudden I felt horrific, just awful. Fatigue, my heart started pounding. It felt like my whole body was shaking, like the palpitations and my heart was beating so hard, it felt like it was just going to beat out of my chest. So I went and sat down and I put a pulse ox on my finger and it said 158. And at that point, I just went, oh no. And I called my friend who was right there, who was a nurse, and said, can you come over here? I really don't feel good. And she looked and saw what my pulse was running and went, oh, that can't be right. And then she felt my pulse, palpated my pulse and said, that is correct. What would you like to do? Do you want me to call for an ambulance? What would you like to do? So I thought, well, let's do an EKG first and then go from there. I was, like I said, I was pretty bad off, really didn't feel good, but I was really trying to stay calm. So we did the EKG and it showed supraventricular tachycardia, and my heart rate was, I believe at that time it was in the 150s, but in just the next few minutes, it was 160s, 170s. I think the highest, I think they said was like 178 or 180. Anyhow, so I felt like my symptoms were just worsening. It was getting worse and worse. They did get everyone in there to help. It was incredible, just the way everyone jumped in, and teamwork, all these nurses and, all my coworkers, EMT, custody, everything, just really jumped in to help. It was incredible. So they called and got an ambulance on the way, and at that point, I just kind of, got worse and worse, and an AED was applied, and it advised a shock. I was awake during the shock, and that was like nothing I could even really put into words other than saying it was very painful, extremely painful. It was like a big shock, and then it almost felt like aftershocks, and I don't know if that was my heart restarting in that new rhythm, and that's just what it feels like. I'm not sure, but it was just hard to explain. So at that point, emergency services got there, basically got me loaded up in the ambulance and got me over to the hospital. I guess one of the funny things to mention, since I do work in a jail, is when there was a deputy that accompanied us behind the ambulance. My husband came in the ambulance with me, and I guess the nurses asked her when we walked in if I was an inmate. So they had to explain that no, I'm not an inmate, I'm a nurse at the jail. So anyhow, At that point, my heart rate was sinus tachycardia, so that shock did take me out of that SVT rhythm and put me into sinus tachycardia. I actually did feel a little better after the shock. I still really didn't feel good, but it wasn't quite as bad as before I was shocked. So I think that shock definitely put me in the right direction. They couldn't get my heart rate under the 140s in the ER, so they did some fluid resuscitation, and what that means is they used pressure bags on 2 IV bags that were 1 liter each and got those in me, as quick as they could. My blood pressure at that point was running low. I want to say I was running 90s over 50, and my heart rate was 140, and it just wasn't budging, with the fluid resuscitation. So they did decide at that time to do some diltiazem or cardizem IV, but she didn't want to give it to me until they could get my blood pressure up. So maybe 10 minutes later, I think, my blood pressure finally got to maybe 100 over 50, and they went ahead and made the decision to give it. So unfortunately, I was one of those people that it really didn't work well on. For about a minute, I think I came from 140 down to 130, and then I was right back up to the 140s. So at that time, my husband and I, especially my husband, asked, are you guys going to check for diabetic ketoacidosis? Because we noticed that my blood sugar was high, and I woke up with a blood sugar of 90. And I did turn my alarms off while I was at work just so it didn't, make crazy loud alarms. But my blood sugar in the morning at work was fine, and I hadn't eaten any carbs that day because I didn't feel good. So the last time I had checked my blood sugar, I want to say it was maybe around 150, and that was only a couple hours before this. So I knew I had insulin in my system, my pump was working. This wasn't normal circumstances for diabetic ketoacidosis for me. When I had been in DKA in the past, I always, every single time had severe stomach cramps, and once I would start vomiting like continuously, and I was so weak I'd be on the floor, I couldn't even, get up or anything. That's when it would be time to go to the hospital. Now, I haven't been in diabetic ketoacidosis in, I think, about 6 or 7 years, so it's been a while, and I am a little older now, so, as we age, things tend to manifest a little bit differently, and type 1 diabetes can kind of evolve, as you age. So I'm not sure if that is kind of a contributing factor to how this happened. But they did run some testing, and it turned out that, yes, I was in diabetic ketoacidosis, even though, my insulin pump was working and I had insulin in my system. It just doesn't usually happen like that. Usually it's like a kinked cannula. I have no insulin in my system, and then within a few hours I'm in diabetic ketoacidosis. But this has never happened to me before with working insulin in my system. So I spiked up to about 305, I think was my top number at that point during all the testing and lab work. And it was decided at that time by the ER doctor that I was going to go to the cardiac ICU and be put on an insulin drip and the diabetic ketoacidosis protocol. I had a calcium drip, let's see, calcium, potassium, and magnesium. Yeah, and then along with the insulin drip, fluids, going continuously, like fluid bolus, a lot more fluid, and I was on a cardiac monitor. So it took about 24 hours to get me out of diabetic ketoacidosis and get me off all the drips and everything. And then at that time, the whole time my heart rate was, I think it was bouncing between about 100 and 110, 120 at rest. So on that following day, after I came off the insulin drip, actually it was the same day, I had 3 different times where I had runs of tachycardia, fast heartbeat, up into the 150s, 160s, and yeah, so they decided that they were going to consult a cardiologist. The cardiologist came and met with me, reviewed my chart, reviewed my last hospitalization a month ago, and she said she's very, very highly suspecting POTS syndrome. So she wanted to get me on medication for POTS, which basically she said is propranolol, 10 milligrams, 3 times a day, and see if that can bring my heart rate down but my blood pressure's got to be at a decent level. So it was kind of interesting because they started the propranolol, and it's supposed to lower your blood pressure marginally, but it's never supposed to raise blood pressure. I really don't know why my blood pressure is raised, but my blood pressure ever since they started that medication has been more like 120 over 80 even at night. Really weird. Now that I was released from the ICU, of course, now my blood pressure is coming back down to my normal, and I did have a blood pressure in the 90s over 50s where I couldn't take the dose of propranolol, so I've missed one dose now, which is a little concerning for me, of course, because I don't know, I almost feel like I have a little PTSD from going through this or something. I'm so afraid that something's going to send me back into this fast rhythm, and it just was so bad feeling. So basically, I have a follow-up with a cardiologist back at home in Florida on Tuesday, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they say. I did get all the information from the AED finally today, like exactly what happened and what my rhythm was, and when it shocked, and then my rhythm afterwards and everything. So that was interesting to see, and the pieces are just kind of starting to come together now, but I still don't understand why my body decided to go into diabetic ketoacidosis, and also the SVT, and just really all of it. So that's my week. I'm sitting in the hotel room while my husband's off working, and yeah, just kind of running all this through my head and working through it. So, and trying to stay feeling good. So, well, this is fun. I got a leaker. Oh my gosh. Just don't send it to my mom, she'll panic. Okay.
So you're getting discharged.
Okay.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm not going to Disneyland.
No, but Disney World.
Not yet. I hope everyone's having a good week. Yeah, I'm gonna get some rest. Take care.